The CEO divorced her for being infertile. 8 years later, he's shocked when the little girl says, "Are you daddy?" Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Dr. Tom's Love Tales, your home to relax and enjoy the most touching love stories. I'm your host, Dr. Tom, and now, my family. Let me begin with this prayer, a quiet blessing wrapped in love just for you. May today hold you like a mother holds her child, with tenderness, safety, and warmth. May every ache you carry soften, and may your soul feel seen in the silence. You are not alone. You are not invisible. You are deeply precious, endlessly loved, and meant to be here. I pray love finds its way back to your heart, even if the world has made you feel forgotten. Amen. Now, my beautiful family, today I need something from you, softly but sincerely. When the story ends, please rate it out of 10 in the comments. Your voice is everything to me, and if you stay silent, I'll mind. Not in anger, but because I care. I care about your presence, your feelings, your truth. So please, like this video, leave a loving comment, and share it with someone who needs comfort. Let this family shine, not just for the views, but for the hearts we touch. Today's story isn't just entertainment. It's a mirror that might save someone's marriage, someone's family, someone's soul. So don't just watch this story. Let it change you. Let it remind you what truly matters. And as always, I'm covering you in love and light. Let's begin the story. With all my love, forever and always. October 15th, 2010. The Brooklyn Food Festival buzzed with autumn energy as hundreds of visitors wandered between colorful booths in Prospect Park. Steam rose from grills, and the sounds of sizzling pans mixed with children's laughter echoing through the crisp air. Jayden stood behind his modest booth, labeled Jayden's Kitchen Dreams, his lean frame tense with anticipation. At 28, his intense dark eyes reflected the passion that drove him to perfection. His calloused hands carefully arranged golden crab cakes in a precise torage, one representing months of recipe development in his tiny Queens apartment kitchen. This 800 booth rental represented his entire savings, his one shot at changing everything. Then she appeared. Layla Cooper rushed through the crowd, her arms overflowing with bright flyers advertising her children's dance classes. Her long, dark hair caught the sunlight as she hurried between booths, trying to promote her studio before the afternoon rush. At 26, she moved with the natural grace of someone who understood rhythm in her bones. A sudden gust of October wind caught her papers, sending them flying like confetti. She stumbled, trying to catch them, and crashed directly into Jayden's display table. The collision sent his tower of appetizers exploding across the booth, while she landed squarely in the middle of his carefully arranged setup. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, scrambling to her feet with micrograins tangled in her hair and sauce splattered across her bright yellow sundress. Her cheeks flushed crimson as she surveyed the destruction. "I just destroyed everything you worked for." But Jayden wasn't angry. He was completely captivated. Even covered in his food, she was breathtaking. Her brown eyes sparkled with genuine concern, and when she began laughing at the absurdity of the situation, musical sound that made nearby visitors turn and smile, he felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. "Don't apologize for making my food more interesting," Jayden said, grinning as he helped brush crumbs from her dress. "I've been trying to figure out how to make my presentation more dynamic. You just solved my problem." Their eyes met across the chaos, and time seemed to pause. The festival continued around them, but in their small corner of beautiful disaster, the world had completely shifted. "I'm Layla," she said, extending a sauce-covered hand with another laugh. "Professional food destroyer, apparently." "Jayden," he replied, shaking her hand without hesitation. "Professional food creator, recently reformed thanks to you." As they worked together cleaning up the mess, conversation flowed as naturally as breathing. Layla explained she was a dance instructor at the Brooklyn Community Center, her face lighting up as she described helping shy children find confidence through movement. Jayden shared his dream of opening a restaurant that would serve food made with the love his grandmother had taught him, dishes that created lasting memories. "You know what's incredible?" Layla said as they restacked his remaining appetizers. "I was actually looking for catering for my kids' dance recital next week. They specifically requested fancy food that makes us feel grown up." "And I," Jayden replied, his smile widening, "have been searching for someone who understands that food isn't just about eating. It's about creating moments that truly matter." They stared at each other as the realization hit them both simultaneously. "This is fate," Layla whispered. "I was thinking the exact same thing," Jayden replied. Neither of them knew that this collision would become the foundation of the greatest love story of their lives, but also the source of their most devastating heartbreak. Their romance unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance. Their first official date lasted 14 hours, beginning with sunrise coffee and ending with Jayden cooking in his cramped apartment, while Layla moved around him like they'd been partners for years. "I love you," Jayden whispered on their third date, watching her demonstrate a spinning move to a group of 6-year-olds who'd surrounded them in the park. The children adored her instantly, begging her to show us the magic one more time. "I love you too," Layla replied, her eyes shining. "And I love how you see wonder in everything, in food, in dreams, in people like me who accidentally destroy your life's work and somehow make it better." Their wedding 18 months later perfectly captured their souls. Layla choreographed their first dance, a fusion of traditional waltz and contemporary movement that left their guests weeping with joy. Jayden personally prepared every dish, transforming their reception into a culinary experience people would remember forever. They exchanged vows in the same community center where Layla taught, surrounded by her students who threw flower petals and cheered like they were watching their favorite teacher become royalty. The early years of marriage were golden. Layla's dance studio, movement, dreams, flourished as word spread about the instructor who could help any child discover their inner confidence. She expanded from the community center basement to her own bright, airy space filled with mirrors and natural light. Her students didn't just learn technique, they learned to believe in themselves. Jayden threw himself into perfecting his craft with relentless dedication. He worked as a sous chef during the day while developing his own recipes at night, filling notebook after notebook with concepts for his future restaurant. His dishes began winning local competitions, and food bloggers started mentioning that brilliant young chef who's destined for greatness. But their deepest dream remained heartbreakingly elusive. Month after month, year after year, they tried to start a family. Layla would light up when her cycle was late, and Jayden would catch himself mentally designing high chairs and planning family recipes. Then would come the crushing disappointment, the quiet tears, the unspoken fear that maybe parenthood wasn't meant for them. "Maybe we should see a specialist," Layla suggested during their 4th year of trying, her voice carefully controlled. "Maybe we just need more patience," Jayden replied, pulling her close. "The best things take time to perfect." They poured their parental instincts into their work. Layla's studio became her sanctuary, where she channeled maternal love into caring for other people's children. Jayden's ambition grew fiercer, his restaurant dreams evolving from a modest neighborhood spot into a grand vision that would establish him among the city's culinary elite. 7 years into marriage, they had built something genuinely beautiful, 2 thriving careers, a love that deepened with each season, and unwavering faith that their family would complete itself when destined. Their Brooklyn apartment became a gathering place for friends, filled with Layla's laughter and the aromas of Jayden's experimental dishes. They were truly happy, even while waiting for their final puzzle piece. Neither realized their greatest test was approaching, not in the form they expected, but through someone who would exploit their vulnerability to destroy everything they'd built together. The monthly ritual of hope and heartbreak had become their marriage's painful rhythm. Every 4 weeks, Layla found herself studying her body for signs. counting days, allowing dreams to bloom. Jayden would discover her lingering at baby clothes displays or watching families in parks with undisguised longing. Then came those devastating mornings when she'd emerge from the bathroom with tears streaming and defeat in her whispered words, "Not this month." By their 7th anniversary, disappointment had carved itself into corners of their otherwise joyful life. They'd consulted fertility specialists who found nothing definitively wrong but offered no guarantees. Layla had undergone countless tests, changed diets, tried acupuncture and meditation, anything that might shift odds in their favor. Jayden suggested considering alternatives, but Layla wasn't ready to abandon the dream of carrying their child. The stress began affecting Jayden's professional focus. He'd lose concentration during recipe development, his mind wandering to nursery designs and family vacations existing only in imagination. His sous chef position felt increasingly limiting as he watched peers his age opening restaurants while he remained trapped, unable to take financial risks without knowing their family situation's demands. That's when Vincent Romano entered their lives like a storm disguised as opportunity. Vincent Romano was 82 years old and moved through the world like someone who owned it because largely he did. His restaurant empire, Romano Holdings, included 15 high-end Manhattan establishments, a catering company serving the city's elite, and a food distribution network worth hundreds of millions. But age had made him acutely aware of mortality, and his greatest terror wasn't death, it was watching his life's work crumble under unworthy hands. Jayden first encountered Vincent at a culinary competition where his duck confit claimed first place. Vincent approached afterward, silver-haired and impeccably dressed, extending a business card that felt heavier than mere paper. "You possess something rare, young man," Vincent said, pale blue eyes studying Jayden with unsettling intensity. "But talent without opportunity becomes merely expensive hobby. Call me when you're ready to be serious about your future." For weeks, Jayden kept that card on his kitchen counter, afraid to call yet unable to discard it. Vincent Romano was legend, the kind of investor who transformed dreams into empires overnight. When Jayden finally gathered courage to call, Vincent invited him to Le Bernardin's private dining room reserved for industry royalty. "I've been observing you," Vincent said over wine costing more than Jayden's monthly salary. "You have instincts I seek: passion, precision, and crucially genuine hunger, not just for food, but for true greatness." Vincent discussed opportunity like others mentioned weather casually, as if reshaping lives was his natural state. He mentioned properties under consideration for new concepts, celebrity chefs who'd begged for his backing, investors who followed his recommendations without question. "But I'm selective about partnerships," Vincent continued. "I don't simply invest in restaurants. I invest in people who understand that building lasting legacies requires sacrifice, sometimes very difficult choices." During that initial lunch, Vincent mentioned his daughter almost as afterthought. "Anne handles much of my business development now. Brilliant woman, Wharton MBA, understands what building dynasties demands. You'll meet her soon." Anne Romano embodied everything her father implied and more. At 32, she was polished, perfection blonde, elegant, radiating confidence that came from never questioning her place in any room. She attended their second meeting wearing a dress costing more than Layla's monthly rent, speaking fluent industry language about market positioning and brand development. "Jayden has such fascinating ideas," she told her father, green eyes lingering on Jayden uncomfortably, very passionate about his work. Vincent began including Anne in every discussion, praising her business acumen while subtly highlighting Jayden's potential. "Anne possesses excellent instincts about people," he'd say. "She recognizes future success from considerable distance. She believes you have exactly what's required to build something magnificent." The meetings grew frequent, restaurant concepts more concrete. Vincent spoke of lease agreements and equipment purchases, marketing budgets and staffing plans. But alongside business discussions came personal observations, delivered with casual cruelty of someone believing wealth granted him rights to judge others' lives. Marriage complicates matters when careers are involved, Vincent would muse during meetings. Success demands focus, dedication. Sometimes spouses fail to understand sacrifices necessary for true achievement. They desire stability when what's needed is bold risk-taking. When Jayden mentioned their fertility, struggle sharing too much in a vulnerable moment, Vincent's expression shifted to something resembling opportunity, mixed with calculated sympathy. The seeds of doubt had been planted so subtly that Jayden didn't recognize them as manipulation. Vincent Romano had spent decades studying human nature, identifying weaknesses and exploiting them for personal gain. In Jayden's fertility struggles and career frustration, he'd discovered perfect pressure points to achieve his ultimate goal, securing a worthy heir for his empire, even if it meant destroying a marriage to obtain one. Vincent Romano's strategy unfolded with the precision of a master chess player moving pieces toward inevitable checkmate. Over the following months, Anne's presence became constant in Jayden's professional world, her appearances carefully timed to maximize psychological impact. Anne understands what it takes to build dynasties, Vincent would repeat during their weekly meetings, his pale eyes studying Jayden's reactions. She's not just beautiful, she's brilliant. MBA from Wharton, strategic mind. Born into this world, she knows how to think like an empire builder. Anne arrived at every meeting impeccably dressed, carrying leather portfolios filled with market research and financial projections. She spoke the language of success fluently: cash flow analysis, brand positioning, competitive advantage. Her confidence filled rooms like expensive perfume, intoxicating and overwhelming. Jayden's concept has tremendous potential, Anne would tell her father while maintaining eye contact with Jayden. But it needs the right kind of partnership. Someone who understands that great restaurants aren't just about food, they're about creating cultural moments that define generations. Vincent nodded approvingly. Anne has overseen the launch of our 3 most successful ventures. She knows how to spot winners and how to position them for maximum impact. The psychological warfare began subtly. Vincent would mention other young chefs who'd missed their moment because they were distracted by personal complications. He'd share stories of restaurateurs whose careers stalled because they couldn't focus completely on what mattered most. Success in this industry requires total commitment, Vincent would say, swirling his wine thoughtfully. Half measures lead to half successes. The great ones understand that building something lasting means making difficult choices about priorities. Anne would nod sagely. I've seen so many talented people plateau because they couldn't maintain laser focus. They let emotional needs cloud business judgment. At home, Layla noticed Jayden's growing distraction. He'd return from meetings energized but distant, his mind clearly processing conversations she wasn't part of. When she asked about his day, his responses became vague, evasive. Vincent thinks the restaurant could be something really special, Jayden would say, but he'd avoid her eyes. He's talking about multiple locations, maybe even a cookbook deal. Layla tried to share his excitement, but something felt different. Jayden had always included her in his dreams before, sketching restaurant layouts at their kitchen table, asking her opinion on menu concepts. Now he disappeared into his home office after dinner, making phone calls in hushed tones. Her monthly pregnancy disappointments became harder to bear alone. When she emerged from the bathroom with another negative test, Jayden's comfort felt routine rather than heartfelt. His hugs carried the distracted quality of someone whose mind was elsewhere. Maybe we should take a break from trying, Jayden suggested one evening after another failed attempt. Vincent says stress can impact focus, and right now I need to be completely present for this opportunity. Layla stared at him, hurt flashing across her features. Are you saying our family is stressing you out? That's not what I meant, Jayden backtracked quickly. I just think maybe we're putting too much pressure on ourselves. But the damage was done. Layla began questioning whether her inability to conceive was becoming a burden Jayden resented. Vincent's poison was working its way through their marriage like acid, dissolving the foundation they'd built with such love. The trap closed during a private dinner at Vincent's Manhattan penthouse, where the old man finally revealed his true agenda. Jayden sat across from Vincent in a dining room worth more than most people's homes, while Anne served wine that cost more than Layla's monthly studio rent. "I'm going to be direct with you, Jayden," Vincent said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I'm 82 years old. I've built something magnificent, but empires don't run themselves. They need the right hands to preserve and expand what I've created." Jayden felt the air grow heavy with implication. Vincent continued, "Anne is my only child. She's brilliant, but she needs a partner who can match her vision and drive. Someone who understands that building generational wealth requires total dedication." Anne leaned forward, her green eyes fixed on Jayden with predatory intensity. "Daddy's empire needs fresh blood, new energy. But it has to be the right person, someone worthy of everything we've built. I'm talking about more than just investment in your restaurant," Vincent said quietly. "I'm talking about making you my heir. Full partnership in Romano Holdings. Access to resources that would make you one of the most powerful men in this industry." Jayden's heart hammered against his ribs. "Mr. Romano, I'm married. I love my wife." Vincent's smile carried the coldness of winter. "And what has that love produced? 7 years of marriage, and what do you have to show for it? No children, no family legacy, a wife whose limitations are holding you back from your true potential." "That's not fair," Jayden protested weakly. "Fair?" Vincent laughed harshly. "Fair is a luxury successful men can't afford. Look at your situation honestly, Jayden. You're 35 years old, working for someone else, watching your dreams slip away while you wait for a miracle that may never come." Anne reached across the table, her manicured fingers touching Jayden's hand. "I understand the restaurant business, Jayden. I could help you build something extraordinary. And unlike some people, I come from proven stock. The Romano bloodline has been producing successful children for generations." Vincent delivered his final blow with surgical precision. "I'm offering you everything you've ever dreamed of and more. Partnership in my empire, unlimited resources, a wife who can give you the family legacy you deserve. All you have to do is stop clinging to something that clearly isn't working." "And if I refuse?" Jayden asked, though he already knew the answer. Vincent's expression turned glacial. "Then you continue struggling in mediocrity while other men seize the opportunities you were too weak to take. I'll find someone else to carry on what I've built, someone with the courage to make difficult choices." Anne squeezed his hand. "Think about it, Jayden. What kind of life are you really living? Watching your wife fail month after month while your career stagnates? You could have everything: success, wealth, children who will inherit an empire. Choose wisely, boy," Vincent said, his voice carrying the finality of fate itself. "This offer won't come again." Jayden left that dinner feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. Vincent's words echoed in his mind as he drove through Brooklyn's darkened streets. 7 years of marriage. And what did he have to show for it? The question haunted him as he looked at their modest apartment, at Layla sleeping peacefully, unaware that her husband was considering destroying everything they'd built together. The transformation happened gradually, like poison working through Jayden's bloodstream. Vincent's words had planted seeds of resentment that grew stronger with each passing day. Every negative pregnancy test became evidence of Layla's inadequacy. Every family gathering where they remained childless felt like public failure. Layla noticed the change immediately. Jayden became distant, critical, finding fault with things that had never bothered him before. When she suggested they plan a vacation to reconnect, he complained about the expense. When she cooked his favorite meal, he barely acknowledged the gesture. "What's happening to us?" Layla asked one evening, tears in her voice. "You feel like a stranger." "Maybe we want different things," Jayden replied coldly. Vincent's poison now flowing freely through his thoughts. "What does that mean?" Layla's voice cracked with fear. Jayden looked at her, really looked in for a moment. His love broke through the manipulation. This was Layla, the woman who'd crashed into his life and filled it with joy. The woman who'd believed in his dreams when no one else would. The woman who'd danced around his kitchen and made him feel like anything was possible. But then Vincent's voice whispered in his mind, 7 years, and what do you have to show for it? Jayden's tortured silence was answer enough. Layla saw the truth written across his face. He was choosing Vincent's empire over their love. "Maybe I married the wrong person," Layla said, her heart shattering audibly. Jayden, hating himself with every word, replied, "Maybe we both did." "When did you stop fighting for us?" she asked. But Jayden couldn't answer. How could he explain that he'd traded their love for Vincent's promise of empire? The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Jayden moved out within a week, his belongings fitting into boxes that seemed impossibly small for 7 years of shared life. Layla watched from their bedroom window as he loaded his car, her hand pressed against the glass like she was trying to touch something already lost forever. 9 months later, Jayden married Anne Romano in a lavish ceremony that was more coronation than wedding. Vincent immediately increased his investment, and within months, Fuego became the hottest restaurant in Manhattan. Jayden's face appeared on magazine covers, his name mentioned alongside culinary legends. But the victory felt hollow. Every interview, every accolade, every success reminded him of what he'd sacrificed to achieve it. Meanwhile, Layla discovered the cruelest irony of all. 6 weeks after their divorce was finalized, she collapsed during a children's dance recital. When she woke up in Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, Dr. Chen's words changed everything. "Congratulations, Layla, you're pregnant." The baby she and Jayden had dreamed of for 7 years had been growing inside her while he was planning his wedding to another woman. Their miracle child had been conceived during their final desperate attempts to save their marriage, when love was already being poisoned by ambition. Layla pressed her hands to her still flat stomach and made a fierce decision. The father chose his empire over his family. She whispered to the life growing inside her, "But you and I will choose each other." She would raise their daughter alone, protecting her from the rejection that had destroyed her own heart. Jayden had chosen Vincent's gold over their love. He would never know what he'd truly lost. Evelyn Delacroix came into the world 9 months later, carrying her father's intense eyes and her mother's unbreakable spirit, completely unaware that her existence was both the greatest miracle and the most devastating irony her parents would ever experience. The wedding of Jayden Delacroix and Anne Romano took place at the Plaza Hotel on a crisp December evening, with 500 of New York's most influential figures in attendance. The ceremony felt less like a celebration of love and more like the coronation of a new culinary dynasty. Vincent Romano spared no expense, transforming the ballroom into an opulent display of white orchids, crystal chandeliers, and enough champagne to float a yacht. Jayden stood at the altar in his custom Armani tuxedo, watching Anne glide down the aisle in a Vera Wang gown worth more than most people's cars. She was breathtakingly beautiful, every inch the perfect society bride. But as she took his hand and smiled her practiced smile, Jayden felt nothing, no flutter of excitement, no rush of joy, only the hollow satisfaction of a business deal successfully concluded. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant announced, and Jayden dutifully pressed his lips to Anne's, sealing a contract disguised as romance. Vincent watched from the front row, his aged face glowing with triumph. His empire would continue, his bloodline secured through the brilliant young chef he'd manipulated so expertly. As the reception began, Vincent raised his glass in a toast that felt more like a victory speech. "To Jayden and Anne," he declared, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "may they build something magnificent together." Within weeks of the honeymoon, Vincent's investment flooded into Jayden's restaurant concept. Fuego opened 6 months later in a prime Manhattan location with a kitchen that resembled a culinary spaceship and a dining room designed by the same architect who'd created restaurants for Gordon Ramsay. The opening night guest list read like a who's who of New York society, food critics, and celebrity influencers. The success was immediate and overwhelming. Food, Wine magazine featured Jayden on their cover within 3 months. The James Beard Foundation nominated him for Rising Chef of the Year. Reservations at Fuego were booked solid for 8 weeks in advance, with celebrities begging their assistants to secure tables. Jayden's face appeared on morning television shows, food networks, and magazine spreads. His cookbook deal alone was worth 7 figures. Within a year, he'd opened a second Fuego location in Los Angeles, then a third in Chicago. The Jayden Delacroix brand became synonymous with culinary excellence and innovation. But success felt like eating cardboard. Every accolade reminded him of what he'd sacrificed to achieve it. Every interview about his perfect life felt like a lie he was telling the world and himself. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Layla watched Jayden's meteoric rise from her modest apartment while bouncing baby Evelyn on her lap. Every magazine cover, every television appearance, every glowing review was a knife through her heart. She'd change the channel whenever his face appeared, but 5-year-old Evelyn would point at the screen with innocent curiosity. "Mama, that man looks like me," Evelyn would say, not understanding she was staring at her father living a life of luxury while they counted pennies for groceries. Layla worked double shifts at her expanded dance studio, building it into a respected performing arts center for children. But every month was a struggle: childcare, Evelyn's clothes and activities. She watched the man she'd loved become richer and more famous while she fought to provide basic necessities for their daughter. "I will never beg him for anything," Layla whispered to herself during the hardest moments. "Evelyn and I will build our own success." The first miscarriage happened 8 months into Jayden and Anne's marriage. Anne collapsed during a charity gala, bleeding through her designer gown in the middle of the dance floor. Jayden rushed her to Mount Sinai Hospital, where doctors delivered the devastating news that their 6-week pregnancy had ended. "These things happen," Dr. Patterson assured them. "It's more common than people think. There's no reason you can't try again." Anne wept dramatically in her hospital bed, clutching Jayden's hand, while photographers gathered outside the hospital like vultures. The story made page 6. Tragedy strikes culinary power couple. But the second miscarriage came 6 months later, then a third, then a fourth. Jayden spent hundreds of thousands flying Anne to fertility specialists around the world. They tried experimental treatments in Switzerland, consulted with reproductive endocrinologists in Beverly Hills, attempted IVF procedures that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Nothing worked. "Maybe we should consider surrogacy," Jayden suggested after their 5th loss. But Anne recoiled from the idea with disgust. "I'm not letting some stranger carry my child," she snapped. "We just need to keep trying." The truth emerged during their 7th visit to Dr. Patterson's office. Anne had endured another devastating miscarriage, and this time the doctor's expression was grimmer than usual. "Mrs. Delacroix, I need to discuss something with you both," Dr. Patterson said carefully. "The repeated miscarriages indicate severe uterine scarring. Based on the pattern and location, this appears to be caused by multiple previous surgical procedures." Jayden stared at his wife. "What kind of procedures?" Anne's face went white. Dr. Patterson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "The scarring is consistent with multiple pregnancy terminations. Mrs. Delacroix, how many abortions have you had?" The silence stretched endlessly. Anne began sobbing, but these weren't tears of grief, they were tears of exposure. "I was young," Anne finally whispered. "I made mistakes. I thought I could fix it later, but the damage is permanent." Jayden felt the world collapse around him. The woman Vincent had promised would give him children and preserve the family legacy couldn't have children at all and had known it all along. Meanwhile, Layla, who had desperately wanted children, had been abandoned for being infertile when she wasn't infertile at all. "How many?" Jayden asked quietly. "7," Anne admitted. her voice barely audible. 7 abortions, 7 deliberately terminated pregnancies from her wild college and early career years. Vincent had to have known, yet it still dangled the promise of heirs and legacy to steal Jayden away from Layla. Around the same time, Vincent Romano became severely ill. What started as fatigue and loss of appetite quickly progressed to multiple organ failure. The old man was hospitalized with treatments costing hundreds of thousands monthly. Jayden paid every medical bill, hoping desperately to save the man who'd given him everything and taken everything that actually mattered. But Vincent showed no signs of improvement. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about quality of life and final arrangements. Jayden sat beside Vincent's hospital bed, staring at the frail figure who'd manipulated him so completely. "You knew, didn't you?" Jayden whispered. "You knew Anne couldn't have children." Vincent's eyes flickered open, and for a moment, his old cunning returned. "I knew you were weak enough to fall for it," he rasped. "I needed an heir. You needed money. Anne needed security. Everyone got what they deserved." Those were among Vincent's final words. He died 3 days later, leaving behind an empire built on lies and a son-in-law who destroyed his life for nothing. Vincent's death marked the beginning of Jayden's downfall. The grief wasn't for the man himself, it was for the recognition that he'd traded Layla's love for the approval of someone who'd never cared about him as anything more than a useful tool. Jayden began making catastrophic business decisions. He opened restaurants too quickly without proper planning. He hired celebrity chefs who demanded outrageous salaries but delivered mediocre results. His attention to detail once, his greatest strength evaporated as depression consumed him. Fuego's quality declined noticeably. Food critics, who'd once praised his innovation, began writing scathing reviews. "Jayden Delacroix seems to have lost his passion," wrote the Times. "What was once inspired now feels mechanical, soulless." The financial losses mounted quickly. 3 restaurant locations closed within 18 months. Jayden's cookbook sales plummeted as his reputation suffered. The celebrity endorsement deals dried up as brands distanced themselves from his failing empire. Anne watched the deterioration with calculating eyes. She realized that if she couldn't produce children and Jayden's empire was crashing, she needed to secure her position before losing everything. Behind Jayden's back, she began systematically taking control of her father's businesses. "He's not blood family," she told Vincent's lawyers. "I'm the rightful heir, not some failed husband who can't even keep his own restaurants profitable." Anne's betrayal escalated as Jayden's financial situation worsened. She started stealing money directly from his business accounts, transferring funds to offshore accounts her father had taught her to create. When Jayden discovered the theft and confronted her, Anne's response was swift and vicious. "You're losing your mind," she told him coldly. "The stress of your failures is making you paranoid and dangerous." Within a week, Anne filed for divorce with accusations that destroyed Jayden completely. She claimed he'd become physically abusive when his business started failing, that she feared for her safety, that his anger over their fertility struggles had turned violent. "He blames me for everything," she told reporters and lawyers. When he discovered he couldn't have the heir he wanted, he became a different person entirely. The accusations were completely false, but Anne had carefully documented evidence, photos of bruises she'd inflicted on herself, recorded phone conversations edited to make Jayden sound threatening, testimony from witnesses who'd been paid to lie. Jayden's reputation was obliterated overnight. The man who'd once been celebrated as a culinary genius was now portrayed as an abusive monster. His remaining business partners fled. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. His face disappeared from magazines, replaced by scandal headlines and legal documents. As Vincent's will was read, Anne inherited everything: the restaurants, the distribution network, the Manhattan properties, hundreds of millions in assets. Jayden, the man who'd been promised an empire, was left with nothing but legal bills and the crushing realization that he'd destroyed the best thing in his life for a lie wrapped in beautiful packaging. The golden cage had become a prison, and now even the bars were being taken away. Jayden Delacroix, once the rising star of New York's culinary world, was left with almost nothing: no money, no reputation, no hope, and worst of all, no way back to the love he'd thrown away for Vincent Romano's poisonous promises. Jayden Delacroix sat in his nearly empty Manhattan apartment, surrounded by legal documents and eviction notices. Everything Vincent Romano had given him was gone: the restaurants, the celebrity status, the millions in assets. Anne's lawyers had been ruthlessly efficient, stripping away his empire piece by piece, while painting him as an abusive failure in every major publication. At 47, Jayden looked like a ghost of his former self. The confident chef who'd once graced magazine covers was now gaunt and hollow-eyed, wearing thrift store clothes and eating ramen noodles for the third day in a row. His bank account held $847, barely enough to cover his phone bill. But as he stared at the calendar marking another year since Vincent's death, something stirred inside him. Not hope exactly, but determination. He'd lost everything, but he wasn't dead yet. His phone rang, displaying the one name that still brought him comfort: Ferdinand Eyes, his former sous chef and the only person from his culinary world who'd remained loyal through the scandal. "Jayden, I've been thinking," Ferdinand said without preamble. "The Brooklyn Food Festival is coming up. They're looking for vendors, and the booth rental is cheaply $500. Jayden laughed bitterly. "Ferdinand, I can barely afford groceries. I can't organize a festival booth. What if we pooled our resources?" Ferdinand's voice carried quiet intensity. "I've got some savings. You've got the talent. This might be our last chance to rebuild something real." Jayden closed his eyes, remembering another food festival 12 years ago when his entire life had changed because a beautiful woman crashed into his booth. That festival had given him Layla. Maybe another one could give him back his soul. "The Brooklyn Food Festival," Jayden repeated slowly. "Where it all began." "Exactly. We'll keep it simple: just you, me, and the best food we can make with what we have. No fancy equipment, no celebrity endorsements, just heart on a plate." For the first time in months, Jayden felt something resembling purpose. "What do we call ourselves?" "How about Second Chance's Kitchen?" Ferdinand suggested. Jayden smiled, his first genuine smile since Vincent's funeral. "I like it. This might be our last chance to rebuild, but let's make it count." They spent the next 3 weeks planning meticulously. Jayden sold his remaining designer clothes to buy ingredients. Ferdinand borrowed his mother's food truck for transport. Together, they developed a menu that showcased Jayden's original talent: simple, honest food prepared with love rather than pretension. The night before the festival, Jayden stood in Ferdinand's cramped kitchen, preparing their signature dish, the same crab cakes that had won him first place 12 years ago, the ones Layla had destroyed so beautifully when she crashed into his life. "You nervous?" Ferdinand asked, watching Jayden's hands move with their old precision. "Terrified," Jayden admitted, "but also grateful. Whatever happens tomorrow, at least I'll know I tried to find my way back to who I used to be." October 15th, 2022. 12 years to the day since Jayden first met Layla. The Brooklyn Food Festival buzzed with familiar energy as vendors set up their booths under crisp autumn skies. Jayden and Ferdinand arrived early, their modest setup a stark contrast to the elaborate displays surrounding them. Second Chance's Kitchen occupied a corner spot with a simple banner and basic equipment, but Jayden had never felt more focused. This wasn't about impressing critics or building empires. This was about rediscovering the joy that had made him fall in love with cooking in the first place. As the morning progressed, Jayden found himself actually smiling as he plated dishes. Children ran between booths while their parents sampled foods, creating the kind of warm, chaotic atmosphere that had been missing from his sterile celebrity restaurant empire. Then he saw her. Layla Cooper stood near the children's performance area, coordinating what appeared to be a dance demonstration. She looked older, more confident, radiating the kind of quiet authority that came from knowing exactly who you were and what you were meant to do. Her dark hair was shorter now, framing a face that had grown more beautiful with maturity and purpose. Jayden's heart stopped completely. 12 years dissolved in an instant, and he was 28 again, watching the most captivating woman he'd ever seen crash into his carefully arranged life. But then his attention shifted to the girl beside Layla, and the world tilted on its axis. The child was perhaps 12 years old, with long dark hair and an intensity that took Jayden's breath away. She moved with Layla's grace, but carried herself with a familiar, stubborn determination. When she turned her head to call instructions to the younger children, Jayden saw his own eyes staring back at him, the same unusual storm gray shade, the same way of tilting her head when concentrating. "She's mine," Jayden whispered, the realization hitting him like lightning. This brilliant, beautiful child was his daughter. Ferdinand followed his gaze and went completely still. But Jayden was already moving, drawn across the festival grounds by an invisible force. Every step brought the resemblance into sharper focus. The girl had his hands long-fingered and expressive. She had his way of studying things with analytical precision. When she laughed at something, one of the children said, the sound carried echoes of his own laughter from happier times. Layla sensed his approach before she saw him, some sixth sense making her turn. Their eyes met across 20 feet of festival chaos, and Jayden watched her face cycle through shock, recognition, and something that might have been pain. "Layla," he said softly when he reached them. "Jayden." Her voice was carefully controlled, but he could hear the tremor underneath. The girl, his daughter, looked up at them with curious intelligence. "Mama, who's this?" Layla's protective instincts visibly kicked in. She moved slightly in front of the child, her stance becoming defensive. "This is Mr. Delacroix," Layla said carefully. "He's someone I used to know." Jayden couldn't stop staring at his daughter. She was everything he'd ever dreamed their child would be: confident, brilliant, kind. He watched her organize the younger children with patient authority, saw her solve a problem with the sound system using logical thinking that reminded him painfully of himself. "What's your name?" Jayden asked softly, crouching to her eye level. "Evelyn," she replied with easy confidence. "Evelyn Cooper. I'm helping Mama with the dance demonstration because I'm practically an expert at organizing things." Evelyn. The name hit him like a physical blow. It meant wisdom in Greek, perfectly fitting for a child who clearly possessed intelligence beyond her years. "She's mine," Jayden repeated to Layla, but this time it wasn't a question. Layla's face hardened. "She's mine," she corrected firmly. "I raised her. I love her. I'm her family." The words carried 12 years of single motherhood, of struggle and sacrifice and fierce protection. Jayden saw the truth, written in Layla's eye, as she would fight anyone who threatened Evelyn's security, even him. That evening, after the festival had ended and the crowds dispersed, Jayden found himself standing outside Layla's performing arts center. The modest building had been transformed from the simple dance studio he remembered into something magic. Large windows revealed bright spaces filled with mirrors, berries, and the kind of warmth that came from being truly loved. Layla emerged from the building alone, having dropped Evelyn at her sister's house for the night. She moved with tired grace, the weight of the day's emotional collision visible in her posture. "I know you're there," she said without turning around. Jayden stepped from the shadows, his hands shaking. "Layla, please, I need to explain." "Explain what?" She turned to face him, and in the streetlight, he could see tears glistening in her eyes. "How you abandoned us for Vincent's money. How you chose his empty promises over our love. How you married his daughter while your actual daughter was growing in my belly." The words hit him like physical blows, each one deserved and devastating. "I lost everything," Jayden said, his voice breaking. "Vincent's dead. Anne stole everything and left me with nothing. The restaurants are gone, the money's gone, my reputation is destroyed. All I have left is regret and the hope that maybe, somehow, you can forgive a fool who destroyed the best thing in his life." Layla studied his face, seeing the genuine devastation there. "I know about Anne's accusations. I know about the divorce, the business failures. I've been following your story. Then you know I got exactly what I deserved." "No," Layla said softly. "You got exactly what Vincent planned for you. I may have been hurt, Jayden, but I'm not blind. I saw how he manipulated you, how he used our struggles against us." Jayden staggered backward as if she'd struck him. "You knew?" "I suspected. Vincent Romano didn't become one of the wealthiest men in New York by being nice. He saw your ambition, our fertility problems, and found the perfect pressure points to get what he wanted. Then why didn't you fight for me?" The question came out anguished, desperate. Layla's expression shifted to something that looked like infinite sadness. "I did fight for you, Jayden. Every single day of our marriage, I fought for you. But you stopped fighting for us. The moment you started believing Vincent's poison over my love, I knew I'd already lost you." They stood in silence for long moments, 12 years of pain and misunderstanding hanging between them like fog. "I forgave you long ago," Layla finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had to, for Evelyn's sake and my own peace. Carrying that anger would have destroyed me, and our daughter deserved better than a bitter mother." Jayden felt his knees nearly buckle. "How? How could you forgive something so unforgivable?" "Because I realized that Vincent didn't just manipulate you, he manipulated us both. He turned our greatest strength into our greatest weakness. Our love for each other became the weapon he used to destroy us." "Layla, The question isn't whether I can forgive you, Jayden. I already have. The question is whether you can forgive yourself enough to be the father Evelyn deserves." 2 years later, the grand opening of Harmony, a center for arts and culinary excellence, drew crowds from across New York City. The converted warehouse in Brooklyn housed both Layla's expanded performing arts program and Jayden's carefully rebuilt culinary school, creating a unique space where creativity flourished in all its forms. Evelyn, now 14 and taller, moved between the kitchen classrooms and dance studios with easy familiarity. She'd inherited her father's analytical mind and her mother's artistic soul, equally comfortable discussing flavor profiles and choreography. The transition to having both parents in her life had been surprisingly smooth, perhaps, because both Jayden and Layla had learned to put Evelyn's well-being above their own complicated history. "Dad, the soufflés are ready for judging," Evelyn called to Jayden, who was demonstrating knife techniques to a group of aspiring chefs. The word "Dad" still sent warmth through his chest every time he heard it. Jayden had rebuilt his reputation slowly, teaching cooking classes to children and adults who wanted to learn for the joy of it rather than professional ambition. His approach had completely changed. He now focused on the emotional connection between food and memory, teaching students to cook with love rather than ego. Layla watched from the doorway of her main studio, where advanced dance students were preparing for their evening performance. The past 2 years had been a journey of careful rebuilding, not just of Jayden's relationship with Evelyn, but of something new and stronger between Layla and Jayden themselves. They weren't the same people who'd fallen in love at a food festival 12 years ago. They'd been broken and rebuilt, tested and tempered by loss and betrayal and the hard work of forgiveness. What they'd created now was more resilient than their original romancea partnership, built on truth rather than dreams, on acceptance rather than idealism. "The Times Reviewer is here," Ferdinand announced, appearing at Jayden's elbow. The newspaper was planning a feature story on their innovative educational model. "Good," Jayden replied, plating the final dish for judging. "Let them see what happens when you build something real instead of something flashy." That evening, after the last students had departed and the building grew quiet, Jayden, Layla, and Evelyn sat together in the center's main kitchen. Sharing a simple dinner, Jayden had prepared pasta with vegetables from the garden they'd planted behind the building. "I've been thinking about something," Evelyn said, twirling spaghetti around her fork with the precision Jayden had taught her. "We should write a book together about second chances and forgiveness and how families can be rebuilt." Layla smiled. "What would we call it?" Evelyn considered seriously. "How about the greatest treasures are the ones we almost lose and then fight to win back?" Jayden reached across the table to take Layla's hand, and she didn't pull away. They'd learned that love wasn't just about falling into each other's arms. Sometimes it was about fighting your way back to each other through years of pain and misunderstanding. "I like that title," Layla said softly. "Me too," Jayden agreed, "because it's true. Sometimes the most beautiful things in life are the ones that require us to become better people to deserve them." Outside, Brooklyn hummed with evening energy, but inside their center, three people who'd found their way back to each other after the deepest kind of loss continued building something that would last, not because it was perfect, but because it was true, hard-won, and built on the unshakable foundation of forgiveness and genuine love. The empire Jayden had gained and lost had been built on lies and manipulation. This new kingdom they were creating together was built on something far more valuable: the understanding that the greatest wealth wasn't money or fame, but the courage to love completely, lose everything, and find the strength to love again. My dear family, as we finish this story tonight, I want you to look around your life. Who are the Vincent Romanos trying to convince you that love isn't enough? What dreams are you chasing that might cost you everything that actually matters? Jayden learned the hardest lesson of all, that some opportunities aren't opportunities at all. They're beautifully wrapped destruction. But here's what gives me hope. It's never too late for redemption. It's never too late to choose love over fear, family over fortune, authenticity over approval. Layla's grace, Evelyn's forgiveness, and Jayden's transformation prove that the human heart has an incredible capacity to heal and rebuild. Tonight, call someone you love. Choose someone you've been taking for granted. Tell them they matter more than any deal, any opportunity, any validation from people who don't truly care about your soul. Remember, you are loved beyond measure, and your choices today are writing the story your children will inherit tomorrow. Make it a beautiful one.